everybody, and welcome back. This is Wendy Carrier, and today I'm doing the fourth in a series about the self coaching model. And the self coaching model is super cool way that you can coach yourself. Today we are talking about the feeling line on the self coaching model, and I really want to. It's important to me to share with you guys a concept that made a really huge difference for me in my life, and it's the concept of 50-50. It has to do with feelings. So we're going to talk about the concept of 50-50, and we're going to talk about how to deal with, how to process your negative emotions. So those are the two main things that we're going to discuss in conjunction with the self-coaching model. So a quick recap on the model. We have a circumstance that's an event in our lives, and we tend to think thoughts about our circumstance all day long, every single day. We're going through thoughts, which create feelings, emotions in our body. And it's from those emotions that we take action and end up with results. The results almost always tie right back to that thought. So today we're talking about the very, very important emotion line of the model. Specifically, we're going to talk about how to deal with the negative emotions. Now, here was my big aha moment when I was studying coaching. I think there's a common misconception in the coaching world and in the world in general that we should always be feeling positive emotions. We should always try to get ourselves to feel happy, excited, encouraged. And the reality is that we don't always feel happy emotions, and that when we feel the negative emotions, nothing has gone wrong. The reality is, as humans, we're going to feel both, and both is just part of the human experience. I mean, think about it. If we didn't know what sadness was, if we didn't know what grief was, it would be impossible for us to understand what happiness was or joy was. We need the contrast in our life to live a full life and to experience the positive emotions. And once we accept that life is going to be more or less 50-50, 50 great emotions and 50 stinky emotions. Once we accept that, we can stop beating ourselves up. I'm starring this because it was such an important thing for me. Once we accept that half of life is going to be tough and half of life is not going to feel great, we can stop beating ourselves up. We can stop feeling bad about feeling bad because that's just part of the deal. Okay? So realize that in your world, when you're feeling negative emotions, it doesn't mean anything has gone terribly wrong. So you might ask, what do we do with these negative emotions? We have the self-coaching model. So if I'm feeling a negative emotion, maybe I can just change my thought about that feeling. And while that works, and it can be a really constructive way to deal with some of your negative emotions, is to examine your thoughts, I would also suggest that some of your negative emotions need to just be. And what you really want to do is try to interrupt your model right at that negative emotion. Um, and how do you do that? So we're not used to doing that as a society, as people. We're not used to stopping and just feeling our negative feelings. I mean, that even sounds hard, right? Like, how are you going to sell that? Who wants to stop and be in their negative feelings? Um, I think it's the best way. I think it's the best way to get through a lot of the more the stronger negative feelings that are out there. Because if we don't, they tend to keep coming back in one way or another. So we're going to talk about how you can pause with your negative emotion and how you can really take control of it. instead of instead of having it own you, instead you can own that negative emotion, and it will give you more power to process it and also to get through it quicker, or at least in a better fashion than maybe what happens when you don't do that. So in our society, when we have negative emotions, I'm just going to draw a big frown, and we know what that means. And I'll tell you guys, I was not taught these skills. These were not taught in school. They were not necessarily, my parents didn't teach me this. So this was news to me. And I want to kind of explain to you guys the way we tend to deal with the emotions, and then how we want to deal with the emotions. So we feel a negative emotion and we react. And that would be where we just go through our model. We think, something, I hate my job, I'm feeling angry, and I react. I snap at my boss, or I drive real fast, or I say things I wish I wouldn't have said. That is a reaction, where we just have the negative feeling and we react. A lot of us will confuse reacting with feeling. We'll think, okay, I feel my anger. I yell, I scream, I do my things, and that isn't really feeling it. That's more of a reaction. Another thing we do is we resist the emotions. We push back on them. We pretend they're not there. We try to think a better thought. We try to get out of them. We push away from them. And that also not a great way to deal with them. They're going to come back, and they're not going to be able to, they still own you at that point. They're not going to be able to flow. React, resist, avoid. This is the one I think we see in coaching the most. I know it's the one that we all struggle with. And avoiding looks like overeating. It looks like over drinking. It looks like working. It looks like going on social media. We have a negative feeling, and instead of dealing with it, we eat the bag of cookies. Instead of dealing with it, we drink the third glass of wine, or we go on social media and we scroll through our phones forever. We're avoiding feeling that negative emotion. The problem with that, well, there's probably more than one problem with that, but one of the problems with that is then we have a secondary problem to worry about. We have a weight problem to worry about, or a alcohol, a hangover to worry about, or we have wasted time to worry about. We're not really dealing with our emotion when we're avoiding it that way. So what we teach, what I was taught in coaching, and what is really powerful is when you get that negative emotion, to not react, not resist, and not avoid, to instead allow that negative emotion, allow it to be there, and let yourself process it. The way you might ask, how do I allow a negative emotion? I've never been taught that, and I wasn't taught that either. But the first thing you want to do to allow it is to name it. The best way to name it is get really specific. Instead of just calling your negative emotion sad, you might want to look more at detail. Is it despair? Is it grief? Is it disappointment? Name it as specifically as you can. There's lists, you can Google a list of emotions. I'll put one on my website, but there's hundreds of English words for emotions. And see which one, when you read through it, when you're feeling a negative emotion, you might want to read through the list and see which one resonates with you. The more specifically you can describe it by its name, the better. The next thing you want to do is describe it. How does that emotion feel in your body? Everybody experiences emotions differently, but a lot of times it's a physical sensation somewhere in your body. So when you feel disappointment, can you feel it in your shoulders? Can you feel it in your stomach? Is it tight? Is it heavy? Is it light? describe it the best you can. And you can do this in a journal, or you can tell your friend or your spouse about it, but describe it as completely as you possibly can. My coach suggests that maybe act like you're describing it to an alien, somebody who's never had an emotion. How exactly does that feeling feel for you? After For me, I like colors and shapes. For some reason, I think in colors, and so feelings, I I almost feel like I'm blanketed in a particular color. So name it, describe it, give it some colors, give it some shapes. And as you're doing that, as soon as you do that, you will be putting some space between that negative emotion and you. You're giving yourself some ownership over it. And as the emotion comes up over the day, over the weeks or the months, or however long that emotion comes up for you, when you see it, you can say, ah, there it is. But I've had that before. That's anxiety. What am I going to do with it? This separation gives you some power over it. And people will get worried. They're like, geez, if life is 50-50, if I'm feeling negative emotions 50% of the time, like my family's going to leave me. Like it's going to be crazy. I'm going to be just miserable to be around. And that's not really the case. If you're not reacting or resisting or avoiding your negative emotions, a lot of people might not even know you're dealing with them. By allowing them, it gives you the space. You can kind of put them in your pocket, and you can go through your day knowing this day I'm dealing with grief, and here it is. And I can, when it crops up for me, I can name it. I can allow it to be there instead of trying to push it back. And most people don't. When I'm having a negative emotion during the day, most of my coworkers probably don't even know the difference because I'm not reacting to it. I'm not acting out on it. So it looks more just like my normal life. I'm allowing it and I'm carrying it with me, but I have that control over it. All these, the reacting, the resisting, avoiding, that's the negative emotion controlling you. Allowing it is you controlling it. Keeping in mind that life is going to be 50-50, that was just like a huge aha moment for me. And knowing that I didn't have to try to rush out of my negative emotions, that instead I could be with them and they were just part of the human process, was very empowering. So again, this is my fourth video on the self-coaching model. And I wanted to spend some time on the feeling line because as you're going through your own models, when you're coaching yourself and you come to that negative feeling, your temptation is going to be always to swap out that thought. Like, here I am, I'm having anxiety. Let me think a better thought. And while that can be useful at times, also dealing with that anxiety that's coming up in a healthy way by allowing it is going to give you more power. So again, this is Wendy Carrier. Sorry about the phone noise. You can find me at wendy-carrier.com. Thank you.